Everyone, it's Nick with Us versus Herd. We're back with another watch list video. It's your first time here to like the content, hit subscribe. If you want to get notifications when we go live or post our watch list videos like these, tap the bell. And if you want to join the UvH fam, links are below in our description for our Discord, our Patreon, and our free options trading group on Facebook. So welcome. We're going to get into the watch list here. Back into SPY, they closed it at $299.99. The bulls just could not push it that penny over to 300, and as you can see, we're back right at the top here. And last time we were up here was September 19th and September 18th. We were up here for about a week above 300. We did coast below a little bit. We bounced from 298 back up to 302 until ultimately going back into range in below 295 and back between 285 and 295 due to the trade war news. And what got us out of here was trade war news. And right now, people have been real quiet regarding the trade war. There hasn't been any deal. Phase one, whatever that means, hasn't been signed by the US or by China, and Trump says that nothing's going to get signed till he meets him in November. So things are kind of in a holding period. However, earnings are better than expected. Earnings are actually doing pretty well for the majority of companies. They are beating earnings and growing their companies, and things are going pretty well. There's only been a couple misses in the last couple days. However, earnings season has just kicked off, so we'll see what the big ones are going to do, like Microsoft, Amazon. Those companies are going to do later this week. NASDAQ rebounded a lot because it got hit the hardest in the last week or so, and things are, I think, are bullish, but at the same time, it doesn't really matter if all of a sudden news hits about a trade deal or no trade deal. News hits and we drop back down to 295, 290 pretty easily. So just be mindful of that before going all in, and you probably shouldn't go in all in anyways. But be mindful of where the market is, why we're here, and what is causing it to be up here, and what could cause it to come down. So just be mindful. It's always good to understand your surroundings, understand where you're at, and not necessarily in the market, but in life in general, right? So same rule applies to the market. Just realize where we are at. We're at the top of the range. What got us up here is some trade news that hasn't happened yet, and earnings are pretty good. So what could take us down? Bad earnings or trade news, right? So it's kind of the reverse of that. So if things go well, let's say there is a trade deal, let's say earnings continue to be well, I mean, we could definitely be retouching be retouching 302, going to 305, and even higher. We could break out of this range this earnings season, but you never know. So just use caution. I mean, today we had a slow all day grind up. Volatility was pretty low. We went from 299 up to, we went to 300 at close, but it closed at 299.99. Probably, pissed some people off there. But so I'm not trading SPY right now when volatility is this low. I don't really like to trade SPY. I'm just looking to see what it does. Stocks that I am going to be getting into here: AMTD. So TD Ameritrade. They reported earnings today, skyrocketing from, they closed at 37.65, they're up to 39.5. Let's see here, let me bring this over here. Okay, so TD Ameritrade, they beat on income, revenue. They did kind of lower guidance, but they said it's going to be offset by all the new customers they're going to be bringing in from the free options trading. Not options trading, but the free commission. So I was particularly interested in this because they're one of the first to report earnings ever since Schwab says they're going to go zero commissions on stocks and lower their fees on commissions. Same with TD Ameritrade, E-Trade. So this is pretty interesting because the news. What I'm most interested in here is how the stock is reacting to it. So now we did hit a low of 32 here. It came back and we're back at the top of the range, but now we're at 39.5. So realistically, right now we're just under 40. We're right here, which we could close this gap. So I'm really interested in this stock from a long or a short position where we could definitely drop back down. So I'm keeping an eye on that for tomorrow, see which direction it wants to take. Obviously, earnings were good. Let's see what happens. I'm anticipating that we close the gap here, but like I said, you never know. That's really the only earnings trade that I'm looking at. Stocks like Stamps.com is making headways after hours here because they inked a deal with UPS. However, this is generally not a stock you trade options on in terms of day trading because they basically make their moves only at earnings here. This is an earnings trade here. This was earnings. This is earnings. This is earnings. And now we're going to gap up due to news. You know, if you guys remember, they severed their relationship with USPS. Now they're going with US. So these hit a low of 32 this year. They've been having a rocky year. They went from 211 down to 32. Now they're going back up to 96. But the thing is, this is not really like a day trade. Like, volume is really, really bad in here. You know, these people down here that bought these 80 calls for like 30 cents, these 81 calls for like 20 cents today. There's 25 and 21 volume, like barely anything. You know, this is something that is absolute gamble that has paid off for these people. The monthlies are still no volume on the monthlies. We'll see if some volume comes in tomorrow, but don't generally try to trade these kinds of stocks because there's no volume, no buyers, no sellers. I mean, there's a bid and the ask really, really wide, but you know, in general, it's mostly a waste of money unless you have a chart play that you think can play out over a long time. I generally don't look at Stamps.com, stocks like that, but just want to put it on the radar. Could be a possible trade tomorrow if some volume comes in. J&J, I'm actually in a position. I have the 130 calls, so I'm looking at that right now. Came at support here after that recall news. You know, bounced off support a couple times a day. Came back below. Came back to support after hours here. So we'll kind of see what's going on. You know, I'm thinking it's going to go back up, but just be aware if more bad news trickles out with Johnson & Johnson. Sometimes when bad news hits, more bad news follows. So just be aware. I'm thinking that there's going to be resistance at 132. I like it to like 130, 131 range. So I have the 130 calls for next week currently on. TEVA. So I currently have the 9 strike calls. Now, if you're not aware what happened to TEVA here, TEVA Pharmaceutical shares surged after announcing a settlement that would resolve allegations that it helped fuel the nation's opioid crisis. Sorry. Under that deal, TEVA would donate $23 billion in opioid addiction treatment drugs and pay $250 million over 10 years. So now, what's interesting here is, I mean, $23 billion to drug addiction centers. Addiction treatment drugs. Sorry, they're going to donate $23 billion for that, not to the center. Sorry. What's interesting here is, where is it? The company is pleased to shortly after. It was like down here a little bit. Company is pleased to. Okay, shortly after the announcement, CNBC earnings. Oh, here it is. Okay, TEVA, the world's largest generic drug maker, also announced a settlement with 2 Ohio counties that would provide opioid addiction treatment for 3 years. Neither settlement includes an admission of liability. So they got out of admission of liability. However, they're going to be paying $23 billion plus $250 million over 10 years. So, not saying they're guilty, but usually if you're not guilty, you don't have to pay those type of fines. I'm not saying anything, but which is pretty interesting. But what the biggest thing is for shareholders is now that that's behind them, they can move forward. As you guys know, TEVA has been taking a beating this year from 23, hit a low of 6, and now is at like 8. So if they can get those things behind them, They're going to be paying a lot of money, but that just goes to show you how much money these companies actually generate, how much money they actually have, where they say they're going to pay over 23 billion and the stock goes up 15%. So they're not caring about $23 billion right now. One thing, just be mindful that once it gets in this like the 850, 820 range, it did go to 895 today, but last time it hit this, it did fade back down to 650 area. So right now I have a very small position. I mean, it literally only cost $60 into the 9 calls. Looking to kind of looking to see what's going to happen with it, and kind of get a feel. I've been trading TEVA for quite some time, and I'm excited to see what's going to happen this week and then going into the next week. I mean, I do have some shares as well, but in terms of options, that's all I have. Netflix, I did put a position on at close. I bought the 295 calls for next week expiration, and the main play here is, yes, they have some competition. Earnings wasn't that bad. However, they didn't really exceed expectations. I mean, it did hit 318 after hours, and before coming back, it opened at like 310 or something like that. 309. It opened at like 309. But what I'm liking here is the trajectory here in terms of the higher lows. So we have the low here like 255, then we have another low here at like 260, and then we have another low here at 265, and now a low at like 268, 270 area. So I'm looking to run it to like 280, 287, 290 area. I'm not trying to go to 300. I'm not trying to get into the money. I'm just trying to use the momentum, kind of like I did today. If you watch my video live stream, how I did IBM, it's kind of the same strategy. Pick the direction that I believe that's going to go in, use the momentum and imply volatility, get out of the trade when it goes that direction. I'm not looking to, I do have till next week, so I do have some time, so I'm not looking to make a play tomorrow or even the next day, but just kind of play it low and slow. And if it does go my direction, if it does hit 290, I'll probably sell. I'm probably not going to wait till 295. Just being honest here. If it does go to 290 tomorrow, I would probably be cashing out. So that's all that I got going on. That's my thoughts for the day. As always, stay safe, stay green. It's us for Cert.